creation and discovery, the arts and the sciences. These are the only two fields that I think we need to hold on to. We need a better boat. We need an ark. You know, I've felt this kind of Noah calling on my life, like go build the ark because the flood is coming. And I believe the flood is technology. It is AI specifically. If I'm going to go buy a bunch of land one day to go build a movie studio, well, I guess I'm going to build a living community into that studio for everyone who works there, and also amenitize it like a 5-star resort.
What's next, Austin?
Austin is a hub for these things. It's a hub for creation and discovery. It's a part of its ethos and DNA. My hope, my belief is that not just Wyldwood, but other entrepreneurs and other business people are recognizing where these trends are going and continuing to create spaces where we all have purpose as we move forward in the future.
Ignite your curiosity with Austin Next. I explore how ecosystems are built and how tech shapes the future. Austin is the frontier. It's where innovation takes root and new myths are made. Join What's Next. Zachary Levi, welcome to Austin Next.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I really appreciate it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So we were literally just talking about before we went on, I assumed you came to Austin kind of in the COVID wave like I did and everybody else, and you just said you've been here for 8 years. So what brought you to Austin?
Well, the long and the short of it is I have always felt, quite literally since I was a kid, I felt this deep calling to, this kind of calling on my life to go be an actor. And when I say calling, I mean, I believe that when our soul comes and inhabits our body, I really do believe that there's, I don't know, man, almost like a mission. Like when our soul is there in heaven or whatever you'd like to call that space, there might be an option of some kind, like almost like a choose your own adventure or there's certain things to accomplish on this earth. And I think that my soul, either I chose or it was chosen for me, or it was, a combination of me and God choosing this, but that I was going to be an actor. Like at around 4 years old, let me back up. I think around 3 or 4 years old is when, as a child, is when your awareness really kind of comes online.
Sure.
Prior to that, do you have kids?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we were talking about your kids.
Yeah.
When you're 1, 2, getting into 3 years old, you're alive, you're aware on some level. Your parents crazy, but you're bumping into walls and people are laughing and you don't know why. But around...
Bumping into walls hasn't stopped.
No. Right. But around 4-ish, things start to click. Like you start to go, like the movie kind of begins. Your memories start to begin. And I think that there's a really interesting window as a child from 4 to 7-ish or whatever, where the veil is still thin and you're still able to kind of like tune into God, tune into the universe in ways. And you don't have the mental acuity of like understanding big concepts or having a large lexicon to explain it, but there are things that you know in your knowing, not cerebral knowing, but like in your soul. And I believe that in that window of time, I had these epiphanies. And one of them was I was going to be an actor. I didn't even know what an actor was. I knew that a smiling, laughing person felt good on the inside, and I knew that I could intentionally get someone to that state. And I would do that. And I was like, this is it. This is what I was here to do, to be an entertainer, to evoke these types of emotions in people. Later, I also discovered drama and evoking more depth and more emotion and sadness and things like that, but for positive reasons. But so I knew that I was going to be an actor, more than I wanted to be, although I also wanted to be, but I knew that I was going to be, as if that was a path that I had chosen, like my soul had chosen, like with a video game, when you get like a mission select screen, like, here's the mission parameters, here's what's going to go down. And I don't know, man, I kind of feel like that was what went down. And I also knew that I had this deep calling to build community, to build and foster like really true intentional community. Again, I didn't understand any of these words or concepts, but I've just always known deep down in me that is a part of my DNA. That's part of my calling, my mission. And
how do you think about the difference between understanding the calling and discovery? We were saying, like, I was very attracted and understood, like, this is what I want to be doing work in a lab. That was the thing, discovering a science. For a long time, it was, to like 7th grade, it was, aerospace engineering, and then don't have quite math for that, but then, then discovered DNA and kind of became obsessed with biology and the like. And then it was through this kind of whittling down process. Then as we were saying before, like I then worked in a lab in college and was like, one, I'm not good at this, and I really don't like it. But then thankfully discovered like the business side of life science and bio. But then as that continued to whittle away over time, when I started working with startups, and then now I can very clearly say that my life's mission is catalyzing innovation. But it was less of a...
You discovered your calling along the way.
It was a discovery rather than kind of, as you said, like when you're 4 or 5, like this is, Yeah,
no, listen, I think it's different for everybody. And I can't exactly explain why, but I can tell you that right out of the gate, I felt this calling. I started to implement that calling, and I was good at it. That to me, and it's true. I mean, with other things in my life, there's force feedback, there's whittling down, there's you're kind of corralled, if you will, into ultimately where you're supposed to land. I think that sometimes God gives us ideas that are to draw us down a certain road. You think your calling is this, to get you to here, to get you to there, to get you to here, right? And sometimes that's because it's not an easily definable, like what did you say you feel like your calling is right now?
Catalyzing innovation.
Right. That's a very difficult thing for a kid to wrap their head around, right?
Yeah.
Entertaining people is a somewhat more easily digestible, I think, concept. Because it's what kids kind of, a lot of times, naturally like to do, or, being silly, acting out. And so fortunately for me, if this is in fact what went down, I don't know, it might have just been something because I was a middle child, the only boy between 2 girls, and had parents that, weren't really all that attentive, and I needed to find some attention. And I'm sure all of those things played into it as well.
Right.
But I pretty vividly felt, like I remember telling my parents at, maybe not at 4, but 5, 6, as I was putting together, watching television and seeing people on this buck pretending to be other people for the sake of entertaining others. I remember watching John Ritter on Three's Company. I'm a child. I don't even understand most of the jokes that are in that show. But I watch him tripping over couches and all that stuff, or watching Dick Van Dyke doing the same thing and thinking, yeah, that's it. That's the thing. That's what I'm supposed to do. Now, maybe it was just because I was attracted to it and I liked it or whatever, but it was confirmed to me over and over and over and over again. I found theater, and I poured myself into theater, and I had an immediate knack for it. I had an immediate love for it, and I had immediate talent for it. And that was validated by people coming to me after every performance and saying, don't ever stop doing this. You have whatever it is that you need in order to do this for a living, you have that thing, even as a child. So anyway,
it's so important to get that feedback. I always laugh to this day when I have a younger sister, and so I went back to her high school graduation, the same graduation that high school that I went to. And at that point I was like, I'm out of lab, like I'm not doing this anymore. And like my high school chemistry teacher, my high school, all who were wonderful were like, well, of course you didn't. Like, you were not going to do that. I'm like, you're supposed to tell me that when I'm 16, 17, not let me go in and be like, thankfully I started like not halfway through my PhD, but halfway through like my undergrad. So did not plan to go this philosophical so early in this.
Oh, well, well, too bad. All I do.
Because I did want to touch upon AI and some of these things, and there's a lot of people thinking about like AI and autonomy and agency. And so there's almost this, so when you have calling and free will, like how much, when you say that calling and this is your life's work, and you say whether you chose it early or given, and then how do you build the concept of free will into that, and then the entire issue that we're having this conversation about AI. And one of the things that I think about a lot is you need to impose your will on AI and then on the world, otherwise it's going to happen in reverse. If you just, the whole slop of the crutch.
Tell the world who you are, then they will tell you.
Yeah, that's a much better way to put it, yes.
Yeah.
But then there's the ability to create those like invisible rails that you can ride on. And if you create them, then that's convenience. That's a lot of things better.
Sure.
But so large question here, calling free will and AI all kind of in one.
Right. Well, hold on. We'll put a pin in that because I just want to land the plane really quick on your original question of ultimately what brought me here, which is, and again, I'm sorry, I'm verbose and tangential.
This is one this tends to be,
Listen,
right?
and that's why I love podcasts, because it's actually a long form conversation and not just like, 5 minutes on a late night talk show where you got to be, slinging anecdotes for jokes. Anyway,
you can sling anecdotes for jokes here too.
We'll do that too. Yeah. But anyway, so I felt this deep calling, desire, whatever, to not just be an actor, but also to build community. In fact, I remember vividly when I was, again, 4 or 5, whatever, seeing a cul-de-sac for the first time and lighting up. I'm like, this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And I think most kids have that moment. When you see a cul-de-sac, you're like, what? Why don't we all just live in a cul-de-sac, right? But what is it about a cul-de-sac? Why is it that we all have a thing in us that kind of lights up about that? And I firmly believe it's because it represents tribe. It represents community far more than just a gridded neighborhood, suburban neighborhood represents, right? This circular form represents something that we've known for thousands of years as human beings. It's a safe harbor. It's where love and learning and growth and protection and community and everything is represented. And so I knew even then as a child, I am supposed to go and be a part of this, build a thing like this, not a cul-de-sac specifically, but what it represents. So then fast forward, I'm 18, 19 years old and I'm working in Hollywood, and really getting my first look behind the curtain. And I see how all the sausage is made. And I am so bummed because it's so broken. Hollywood is, and has been from the beginning, it's been just broken. It values profit over people, like every industry does, unfortunately. And I care far too much about other human beings and excellence to work in an industry that doesn't really care about either, by and large. Which is not to say there's not people in Hollywood that do care about excellence and do care about other human beings, but it's not really how the machine works. And I was at a weird crossroads because I felt both that God had called me to be an actor and to now be in this industry, but I'm like, I don't know what to do here. I have too much empathy and too much logic to put myself through this meat grinder. And I believe in that moment, crying out to God, praying on it, thinking on it, God spoke to me, not audibly, but spoke to my soul and God says, Zach, this is why I have you here, because it is broken. And you need to learn all about this brokenness because I'm going to use you, amongst others, to go build a better version of this broken system. But you need to ride this broken boat as long as you can to build your relationships and resources and reputation and learn about all the brokenness so that one day you can go and build a better boat. And as this one is striking iceberg after iceberg and sinking, which it is doing in real time right now, imploding on itself, and AI expediting that process, which we'll get to, we need a better boat. We need an ark. I've felt this kind of Noah calling on my life, like go build the ark because the flood is coming. And I believe the flood is technology. It is AI specifically, but I knew I was going to need and not just, by the way, what is the better boat? The better boat is not just another movie studio, because I knew very quickly, I was like, oh, I need to build essentially what's the word I'm looking for? Whatever. I need to build something in line with what Charlie Chaplin, Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, all those OGs did way back in the day, which was United Artists. That's what they built. They understood how broken it all was. They understood that the ego, power, money-driven executives and studio owners were not in the best interest of the artists, their art, or the audience. And so they tried, unsuccessfully at the end of the day, to build that alternative. And so I was like, okay, I got to build a new United Artists studio, one that is owned, operated by, and really fosters and favors the artists. But it doesn't just stop at that. It's not just a place to work, because there's so many other problems in life. Our health and wellness is broken. Our education system is broken. There are so many other things, pillars of life, that are not good, that need to be fixed. And so I was like, okay, God, if I'm going to go buy a bunch of land one day to go build a movie studio, well, I guess I'm going to build a living community into that studio for everyone who works there, and also amenitize it like a 5-star resort and take care of people on the highest level, because I believe that we are deserving of that. I believe every human being is deserving of the highest level of life if you can offer them that. And I also believe that if you can satiate people's needs, like truly satiate their needs so entirely, then the ego relaxes and they stop thinking about and worrying about wants. And we're all programmed to think that our wants are actual needs, right? I need that new phone. I need that new bag. I need this. I need that. And your ego will never relax. But if you can really just like take care of people on a really high level, and they're not worried about like, I mean, look at our food. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I'm a huge Bobby Kennedy fan. The guy understands, in my opinion, that our food is poisoned, our air is poisoned, our water is poisoned, our drugs are poisoned. And all of why is that happening? Because of corporate greed. At the end of the day, we have a lot of people that are like, listen, I mean, we're cutting corners and we're compromising the product and we're doing this, but bottom lines and margins and shareholders, you get it. It's capitalism. It's like, fuck that. I don't want to be a part of that system. I want to figure out how to do it better. So
I'm going to for a second, because you think about the difference between like crony capitalism and Adam Smith capitalism, and the ability to, like, one of the big reasons I think of, we think about like the food system, right, is if we subsidize corn and you put that in, right, like you have a regulatory aspect that says like, here's the incentive, then of course we will do the incentive.
Exactly.
Right. And so I think a lot of it is, especially on the, you know, on the like the bio and pharma side, is the lack of business model innovation. It's not, you know, I go to the, it's not the grand.
What's the wrong incentives?
Right. So like we have like
wrong incentives.
I can give you, like, I understand chronic disease. Here's the pill. We have this kind of monetization, and that's good. And then back to like Clayton Christensen's, you know, innovator's dilemma. You're like, well, how build something preventative, build something that's aligned with like not getting sick. Like, well, but all my metrics are this way, and the idea of them being able to switch is like, we can talk to like 3 companies ever who've been able to make that kind of switch.
Well, but again, because the incentive structure is wrong, and it's not just wrong. I mean, when it comes to food and medicine particularly, but let's just take medicine, for example.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a broken system when the medicine pharmaceutical companies recognize that if you give people cures, they don't need your product anymore.
I literally did a TEDx talk on that. But it's back to the business model, right? Because you look, you know, things like CRISPR and so forth. There literally is a cure for sickle cell anemia. And it came out about a year ago. It's a CRISPR drug. And in that year, so by the end of last year, like 50 people have gotten it. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, well, it's expensive, all this. But no, there's not a business model for cures. Right. You have to solve that aspect. It's not just the technological, here's the new widget, here's the 20% better thing. We actually have to think fundamentally. I mean, the best that I've seen model for health is the gym. And if I sign up and don't go, their margins are better. So right. Like we haven't solved this side. We're like, how do we align that I can create a business out of keeping people healthy?
Right. Well, but I believe that in large part that starts with the companies having to have some level of integrity, particularly when it comes to medicine, and recognizing the Hippocratic Oath, mm-hmm. and recognizing that you should, I mean, I'm a capitalist, but I'm a conscientious capitalist. If your model is predicated upon, well, yes, we could go solve these problems, but then we're not going to make more money, you've got a major problem, right? If they actually had integrity and they said, well, listen, guys, yes, we could make more money if we don't really cure people and we just keep selling them these Band-Aids to go on these gaping wounds. Yes, we could make more money, but what is it to gain the world and lose your soul in the process? Like, may we go and solve these problems, and may we trust that on a deep spiritual level, we'll be given more opportunities where we can still make money doing this and doing that and doing other things. You will find other ways to monetize that, but don't get into medicine. Don't get into this industry unless you're actually hell-bent on wanting to help people, truly help people, not just perpetuate the problem. But anyway, we could go down that road.
Well, actually, I agree with you, and it's funny because I always flip it. It's always when I hear people like, oh, well, this is a good industry to make money or whatever. Like, not like I don't know the financial incentive, but you always want to flip it and say like, it's Peter Diamandis said, like, you help 1 billion people, you make $1 billion. Like, solve big problems.
Yes.
The money comes.
Yes. Yes. Listen, like him or lump him, but Elon Musk is the type of person who goes, he understands that the carrot at the end of the stick should not be money. Right. It should be solving big problems. When you solve big problems, the money comes, right? It's really simple. It's not difficult, but it requires integrity.
Yeah.
That's the thing. The hard part is, can you fight your own greed? Can you fight your own ego? I've said this before. Actually, I talked about it on Joe's podcast recently, but I'm a firm believer in this. The ego which is a survival mechanism in us, right? Like built into us, I think for a lot of good reason. I think it was something that was given to us because, again, as hunter-gatherer people,
Right.
there was all kinds of dangers in the world and all kinds of, things that we needed to.
The person who thought the tiger was in the bush survived.
Sure, exactly. But the ego really only needed, for thousands and thousands of years, the ego only needed 5 things to be satiated. It needed food, water, clothing, shelter, and community. That's it. That's all you needed. There weren't all these other trappings in life. It wasn't like, oh, I need this car or that car. I need this entertainment or that entertainment. I need this fashion or that. No, none of those, there weren't those options. We didn't live in that world. So the ego, as long as you had food, water, clothing, shelter, and community, it was at rest. It was fine. And then 10,000 years ago, or whenever it was, the Sumerians or whomever they were came up with the monetary system. They were like, well, listen, instead of you schlepping around your pots and me schlepping around my goats and we go and do this barter system and that's a lot to carry around, why don't we just have these little shells and those denote the value of the goats and the pots, and that makes it a lot easier. Great, fine, wonderful idea. The problem, though, is that the ego doesn't know the difference between any of these things. And all of a sudden now the ego got hijacked, in my opinion. The ego, instead of needing 5 things, the ego's like, I don't need 5 things. I just need one thing. I just need more of those shells. And then people started to get, that's where greed came from. Because but not that there weren't people that had a greedy, like, I want more of that meat or I want that, whatever. Yeah. But all of a sudden now we had a whole new, essentially, industry, a whole new thing, which was just get more shells, get more shells, get more shells, get more shells. Because if I can just get a whole bunch of shells, I don't need to work to get that food and water and clothing and shelter and community. The irony is that community is the only thing you actually can't buy, true community. You can buy yourself into a neighborhood. You can buy yourself into a home, into a neighborhood, and you can buy lots and lots of things. But you can't buy authentic community. That's the only thing that you must actually be an authentic human being that's willing to be vulnerable with other human beings in order to connect on that level, to have other people be like, you know what, I like you and you broke your leg and I want to help you with this thing. Now, obviously money can buy you doctors and money can buy you assistance and money can buy you that help, but you're not getting the thing that, honestly, this is what we're all yearning for, is actual community.
Well, so it's funny. So I'm going to throw some data that I think you'll enjoy, because I hear this a lot about community, and then like, oh, well, we just have these like dense walkable neighborhoods, right? And it's funny how you started with the cul-de-sac in the suburb, right? So there was a study out that measured loneliness in the very like urban, suburban, rural, large rural, small rural. And the result was urban was the loneliest, then large rural, then small rural, and then suburban. And I kind of like, okay, it's not necessarily, your point, like you can buy into the great built environment, being downtown New York or Austin or whatever, but if you sit in your house on social media or whatever, or you're not actually creating the community, like that's the other part of it. And my hypothesis, this wasn't in the paper, was in the suburbs, you have kind of automatic community. The kids go to school, you meet the parents, like things of, religious service, whatever they may be. There are kind of these natural connection points. Because like I lived on a cul-de-sac, when I was in junior high and high school. It didn't act that way. Like nobody left the house. Yeah. Like, I mean, like there's this, you look back at some of these kind of places that, but it's funny because the place I lived when I was growing up, before I moved when I was in 7th grade, wasn't on a cul-de-sac, but we were next to the big park, so it was a little bit more of that natural collision point for everybody in the neighborhood. I knew the people kind of around the block and so forth. Yeah. But it is the human element. It's not, we just can't fix it if we like shove everybody together and they're next to us. Like, well, if you don't create the community, it was the decline, the Rotary Club, all these different things that decline.
What are these gathering points? What are these points of connection? I would argue, though, that while it might statistically offer the most amount of opportunity for natural connection points, even suburban life, even take away technology and all that kind of stuff. How many of us live in a neighborhood? You have neighbors that live next to you, live across from you. How many people actually know their neighbors?
We know 2 on our street.
There you go. You might see Bob as you're taking your trash cans in and out from the curb on trash day or the next day. You might have a few gatherings. People who go to church obviously have a community at church, but oftentimes that's once a week, the majority of your community, in my opinion, it's not who you live next to, it's who you work next to. It's who you co-labor with, it's who you co-create with. Because most people are still going to a workplace. And you're there for 8 hours a day, 10, and in Hollywood, 12 hours a day is a standard workday. I'm with hundreds of people every single day when I'm working on a movie. And I love it. I love people. I love being around all these people. I like getting into understanding them and knowing their lives and knowing their families. But the problem with Hollywood is that I'll be working on a movie for 2 months. I meet 400 brand new people, but I hesitate even committing to getting deeper with those people because I know in 2 months' time, I'll probably never see them again. Like the amount of people that I've worked on movies with, other actors, crew, whatever, you get to the end of that movie, the chances of you all coming back together, or even a few of us coming back together and working on another project is very, very, very small. So then you hesitate even putting down
Is there
roots.
a functional then difference community-wise between TV and movies?
Yeah, on a series, depending on, what it is. Like when I did Chuck, we did 5 years, and that was basically the same cast and crew for 5 years. Like I knew them. They were my family. I still consider them my family in a lot of ways. I don't get to see them almost ever anymore, but they all hold a very, very special place in my life. Now, when I work on a film for 2 months or whatever, I still value everybody that I'm working with, and I try to hold on to at least a few of those people. You gather the most akin or like-minded or similar souls. But even still, you're texting, you're calling, you send each other memes, but you don't really get to continue a community with those people. And so I think this is one of the biggest problems. If you're working consistently for 20 years, you're a 9 to 5, and you go to this workplace, well, you know everybody at your workplace far better than you know your neighbors. Far better. That's your community. The issue, though, then, is that you all leave that workplace and you go to your very disparate places of where you live, and you're probably commuting 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. And sometimes I will argue that a commute isn't all that bad. It's time to process and think and listen to some great podcasts or whatever. But it's also a lot of time that you're just sitting in a fucking car when you could be with your family, or you could be with your friends, or you could be creating, and you could
You
be...
appreciate this in LA. When I was lived in LA, it was like a 2.5 hour commute that was South Bay to Amgen to Thousand Oaks.
Oh, man.
That was... I would run out of podcasts.
Yeah, that's a lot. And it's very taxing. It's very sedentary.
Yeah.
It's not good for your body. And there's so much just anxiety and stress when you're sitting in traffic. Now, some people are really good at kind of breathing through it and zenning out and being like, hey, I'm here, whatever, it's going to take what it takes. But even when you're doing that, sometimes you're still like, oh, what is this guy? Why aren't they moving? And that, your brain is active in this thing that you can't even really actively do anything about. So we weren't built for it. It's not good. And many, many people have said this, that we are still hunter-gatherer. Physiologically, we're still hunter-gatherers living in a world of technology that we are not prepared for. We did not evolve to. And it's happening way faster than any of us prepared for, going back to AI. Right? So when it comes to AI, actually, what did you bring up AI earlier? You were talking about...
We're talking about calling free will and then autonomy and agency and bringing AI into that.
Right.
We still haven't answered how you got to Austin.
Well, right. So, right. So anyway, that's ultimately what it was. I got this. I felt like this download from God. You got to go build an arc. You got to go build a better version of Hollywood for you, for everyone that you know, for your families. Like, get back to what it means to have community, consistent community, creating together, co-working, co-laboring, co-creating together. And I knew that I needed a good amount of land to do that, to build a movie studio and living community and resort and hospitality and all the things. And I knew early on I couldn't do it in California. I'm from California. You're from California. I love California in a lot of ways. And it's also so broken and so lost in so many ways. If Walt Disney wanted to build Disneyland today in today's California, it would take 1,000,000 years. The bureaucracy is insane. The red tape is insane. So it's like, all right, well, I'm probably not going to be able to build it in California. What do I do? Then it was deductive reasoning. It was like, okay, well, I should probably go to a state with no state income tax. Of all the states with no state income tax, it's got to be in a state with a climate that I could fuck with year round. It can't be...
So not Alaska?
Does they have no state income tax?
They're one of the 7, I think, yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah. But yes, definitely not Alaska. Or any of the other states that are so far north that the winters are unbearable. Washington State, I've lived there as, for a season of life as a kid. It is gray and dreary most of the year. Not going to do that. Nevada, a wasteland. I mean, not that you can't have some fun in Vegas or whatever, but it's a massive desert, right? Yeah. I did for a second think, maybe I could do it like in the Nevada side of Lake Tahoe or something where it's beautiful, but nobody up there wants you buying a bunch of land and building a movie studio. I don't think that's going to happen. And Florida, sometimes in some places can be nice, but hurricanes and bugs the size of my head, like, no, that's not going to happen. But Texas and Tennessee, I was like, okay, those two, for the most part, the winters can get cold and the summers can get hot, but I can deal with that. And then it was, okay, of those two, either of those states, I needed to be within 30 minutes of the cultural epicenter of that state. And that was either Nashville or it was Austin. And I looked at Nashville in 2013 because I had a bunch of friends that lived there. And I almost pulled the trigger there, but I was like, no, I don't really feel like this is, again, I didn't feel called to that. And then in 2016, I was like, man, I never really gave Austin that proper look. I came out, drove around north, south, east, and west, really took it in for like a week. And I was like, okay, I think this is where I'm supposed to go. And specifically east of Austin, where it was the most affordable, available, developable land out toward Bastrop. And it's on the other side of the airport. So logistically speaking, it makes it a heck of a lot easier when it comes to traffic. Right. And I also knew that I needed to be on some body of water. Water is essential, not just for living, but for thriving, for enjoyment, things like that. And it was very difficult to find hundreds of acres anywhere on any lake around here, but the free-flowing Colorado River, the last dam is the east side of Austin, and then it just flows freely down Serpentine, very parallel to 71, out to Bastrop. And I found 75 beautiful acres on the river, that's 15 minutes to the airport and 30 minutes to downtown. And so that's ultimately what brought me to Austin. And the last 8 years has been slowly but surely putting together the partners and the resources in order to go make this, a reality. And we are actively raising money right now, looking for about $10 million in equity and debt financing the rest in order to go build the first phase, which is two 20,000 square foot sound stages, and 1,000 square feet of creative office spaces, and 20,000 square feet of mill and storage for set building and all that kind of stuff. And then we'll build 42 homes to accompany that and complement that for artists to come and live part-time, short-term, or long-term. People can buy these homes and then live. That's what I'm looking for. I want people to want to live there full-time, have a school for our kids, and also a school that understands where we're going with AI. All of the kids that are in school, how old are your kids right now?
11, 9, and 6.
Okay. What are they learning in school that they're going to be able to even apply in 5 years?
So it depends. So like my oldest one, my oldest one actually goes to Alpha.
Wonderful. We're actually talking to Alpha. I'm trying to get a collaboration with them so that we can have an Alpha school on campus that is training, vocational training for kids who want to go into the arts and sciences of entertainment.
Yeah. So clearly, I mean, if you talk to Joe, or if you listen to like his Invest with the Best podcast, which was amazing, this idea of, that platform as the 1,000 followers, boom, right? Yeah. You have this type of school, that type of school. So I definitely,
that's the way to go.
The ed tech and education revolution that's happening in Austin, whether it be Alpha to University of Austin, to Gauntlet AI, to all these things that are happening. It's just, which is not what I would put when when we came, right? So my wife and I, this is like the fourth time we'd looked at Austin between the two of us. Like, she was looking at UT for undergrad, it was for grad school, and we actually had 2012, we accepted a job offer here. We were moving, company went through a horrific quarter, rescinded the offer, didn't come. But so for us, when we decided to leave California during COVID, we'd already kind of mentally done the narrow. It was like, not where are we going, we're coming for Austin.
Right.
But there was some sense of the tech environment and startups and all that kind of stuff, but had no idea, like, the education revolution that's happening here. I didn't know about the CPG scene. You're drinking out of a Yeti now. It is funny, I didn't own a single Yeti.
And now you own all of them.
Oh my God, we have like 12. It is, and just all of the different, and all of them, like, Austin is core to them. Like, there are other, like, CPG or food scenes, whatever, like San Diego's, like, where Rubio's came out of, and don't really know that. It's not kind of part of their thing versus like, that Tito's came from Austin, that Yeti's from Austin, that all these things. And so it's been amazing kind of discovering all the kind of the hidden parts of Austin. They're not hidden anymore. If you look at that, like, the CPG scene, we had two $2 billion exits this year, right? So it's all that. And then we're building this kind of new, I call it, like, it's the new tech stack, the new cultural stack, the new intellectual stack, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be education, whether it be entertainment, all this kind of stuff is kind of coming together all at the same time.
Austin, I think, in the same way that, basically every place on earth has an energy, and energy has a gravitational force, a magnetism to it, right? Places like Sedona have, portals, energy portals, or, whatever that is. But Austin, I think, has always had, all the way back to its inception and founding, and even before that, for, native peoples that are living here, has always had a certain magnetism. And it magnetizes people, I believe, that are entrepreneurial, that are outside the box thinking, that are creative, and they are supported by the libertine freedoms that a state like Texas provides. So as an artist, one might think, well, you want to live in a more blue state like, California or New York, but the problem is the bureaucracy, it's the red tape. You could have the coolest idea in the world, and they're going to say, that's great, but it's going to be 50 years, and you got to do this, and you got all the regulations and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not arguing, obviously we need to have some kind of regulations. You can't just go build anything anywhere and screw up the environment and hurt other people. But I think that Texas has always had a really good handle on that, which is like, you want to go build something? It's crazy, it's big. Are you hurting anybody else? No? Have fun.
Right.
Go do the thing. And then let the market decide. And it does. So it doesn't surprise me that all of these things are continuing to happen and manifest in a place like Austin. I mean, that's what I saw. That's what Elon saw. That's what Joe sees and you see. I mean, there's something about this place, and it's always existed. And now, even pre-pandemic, it was accelerating greatly, but then the pandemic was kerosene on the fire.
Yeah, and I think that through line that you mentioned, it's important to, when you try to align with it, like, if I can get anything done for Austin, it is kill that Silicon Hills label.
Yeah. Because
you're always, by the way, Silicon Hills, slopes, beach, whatever these things, like, be the first you. If you're trying to, and I think there are first principles to ecosystems and cities. And so, like, look, at the height, like, if you're trying to build a foundational AI model, and I know we will get back to that, you better be an SF. Like, the idea of doing that here, unless you're trying to build something that is very contrarian, to use an overused term, of what they're building in SF, right? If you're trying to build, I think about a lot of, and I've been trying to articulate those first principles, but like, SF is about removing friction. I think a lot of what those things are, and if you look at kind of all the way back to like the semiconductor, right, it was actually called silicon, to like New York City, about opening up and making liquid markets, right? So if you can draw a line from Dutch fur trading to Wall Street. Wall Street wasn't going to happen anywhere else in the U.S. but there. And so understanding those first principles, and when you line up with the geographic first principles, with the founder, with the idea, with the capital, that's when we have generational outcomes. It's not when you're like, I'm going to build the same thing as Silicon Valley here, and that's going to be not as good and just a cheap copy and everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree with you that the idea of labeling things like this is Silicon Hills, and listen, it's its own thing, and it should be its own thing. People label them because it's quirky and it's fun, and it's also, it's marketing, and it helps people to understand what is that place, right? If there's a massive tech scene somewhere, it's Silicon something. So, but I agree, I don't like the baggage that comes along with it. But what makes it different is not the industry. I mean, it's the people that are creating whatever they're creating in that place. Mm-hmm. So San Francisco attracts a certain type of tech developer. Austin attracts a different type. Some Venn diagram there, but it attracts a different type of person that wants a different type of life experience. And that type of person thinks in different ways, even though they work in the same industry and they might have some similar ideas. But obviously they're attracted to different aspects of what that industry is, and certainly a completely different ethos of city. And that's why a lot of people who were a part of Silicon Valley, but were only there because that's the only hub that existed for it, were like, I'm out, I'm done. Like, I don't need, because the reality is you don't need to do anything in tech in San Francisco. Is it helpful because lots of VCs and private equity and that whole ecosystem is, sure, fine, whatever.
Scale matters.
Sure. But anybody, particularly now with AI, we keep dancing around touching AI, but even with AI, A really talented programmer or, entrepreneur doesn't need to be in San Francisco to do what they want to do. You could do it anywhere. You could do it in Duluth. I mean, if you've got the technology, you've got your own computer, you're creating something, you can go do that. Does it make it easier to go rub elbows with the rest of the ecosystem to get your rounds of financing and all that stuff? Sure, fine, whatever. I think Austin is providing...
Planes also exist.
What's that?
Planes exist.
And planes exist,
right.
Exactly. And I think that Austin is providing not the same thing, it's providing an alternative to that. It might deal in a lot of the same circles or the same technologies, but it's different people with different ethos and different philosophy that are attracted to a place like this.
Which does lead to then building different things.
Exactly.
And I think also it's been interesting to see, and I think I like the way you articulated it, because the people who kind of like, I'm out and I want to be here because there's a fit, there's a vibe, there's an ethos that fits, versus the people who came and then left within like a year.
Yeah.
And like, a lot of it was like, okay, this is the cool place, right? Yeah. I mean, if you look at, and it's funny that you mentioned Nashville, if you look at prior to Mayor Suarez's tweet about Miami, of like, when somebody said, let's move Silicon Valley to Miami, and he's, like, how can I help? The zeitgeist was it was Austin and Nashville were like, that was the winners of the pandemic move. And then Nashville kind of got pushed to the side, and it was Austin and Miami. And how that kind of, here are the cool things, and like, I'm still generally bullish on Miami, but it's kind of taken a step back.
Yeah.
Versus
Boise too, by the way. There
yes.
was a big boom up in Idaho, Boise, But yeah, I mean, listen, I think that Miami or Florida in general, but obviously Miami being the, the city that is the city of Florida, in the same way that, well, actually in Texas, you've got a lot. I mean, Dallas and Houston and San Antonio are all, in fact, they're all larger than Austin in certain respects, but not when it comes to tech. But yes, in the pandemic, people were looking, whether they understood it or not. For me, I did a lot of deductive reasoning in order to come to the same conclusion that a lot of other people just came to because other people were going. And it was like, oh, Nashville. And it's true. Nashville magnetizes a lot of awesome, cool, interesting, creative people as well. And there is other industry outside of the music industry that's there, but it doesn't have the same energy. And by the way, and no city has the same energy. Every city has got their own kind of gravitational force, its own vibe, its own energy. Personally, for me, and for a lot of other people like yourself, Austin hits in such a way where it's like, the nature's off the charts. Like it's a city that actually protects its nature and like fosters it. I mean, Barton Springs is such a fascinating example. Even Lady Bird Lake, which is the Colorado River, right? So you've got a pretty significant city, metropolitan area, that has a river that runs through the middle of it that people are recreating on. Name me one other major metropolitan city that has a river that runs through the middle of it that has anything other than just like industrial barges and stuff like that. Exactly. I mean, that struck me immediately. I thought, this is fascinating. That it's not just, let's develop just to develop. Let's just build to, yes, let's grow, but let's grow with intention. Now, has it done it perfectly? No. Maybe, a lot of hardcore, long-standing Austinites are quite upset with the fact that there's a Soho House here or whatever else, right?
They also made the decision like 25 years, if we don't build it, they won't come.
Yeah.
We came and we didn't build it. Now we need a few things built.
Yes, exactly. Particularly infrastructurally. And there's a little bit of a catch up on that, but I think we're getting there. But the nature here is fantastic. The food is fantastic. The music scene's fantastic. Now Joe Rogan single-handedly has made it the comedy mecca, essentially, podcasting mecca, health and wellness mecca.
It's funny on the Rogan, like I just put in like perplexity. I was like, just tell me the top live comedy places in the country, and had Austin as 3.
Yeah.
It's so many of these things that had this kind of like this, you said like this 30-year, 100-year, however you want to like base to build off of.
Yeah.
And then you said kerosene 2020 on, right?
100%.
Like you had I kind of put this like the heavyweight class, like people that could actually bend the nature of the city themselves.
Well, yes, but because the city already, not physical actual infrastructure, but the energetic infrastructure.
Yeah.
Right? Like, come here because it will support these interesting ideas. It's always been able to do that. I mean, Robert Rodriguez and Richard Linklater have been making movies here for a long time. Now, the filming incentive was garbage for a while. Finally, at long last, the Texas legislators have woken up to the idea and the fact that if you have a good filming incentive, you can, for every dollar you spend, you make $5 back. I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty good, right? Yeah, that's the kind of that's the give-get, that you want to be able to get when you're bringing industry to a place.
So we've seen that the I don't know if hollowing out's right, the shift in Hollywood to like Georgia and Toronto, I think are like some of the big places. Does it, play devil's advocate here, does it actually create long-term value, or is it just kind of create another kind of mercenary aspect of like, okay, we're going here and then we want, Idaho will be the next one to kind of do and it'll move there. I've heard, but they're like that Atlanta and Georgia's losing it a bit now.
It's struggling. But that's everywhere in the U.S. Because Hollywood they're really agnostic. Like Hollywood doesn't really care where they shoot. They just want the best deal, right? And that's a lot of industry. It's just all about bottom lines. Like how can we squeeze every last cent out of this so we can make better margins? That's what it ultimately comes down to. So once upon a time, everything was shot in L.A. That's what it was. And it was great. I mean, particularly when it came to the idea of having a family, putting down roots, having community. I mean, actually, you go back far enough, it was real. Hollywood was just a bunch of kind of their own little factory towns. During the studio system, as an actor, I would be hired by an employee owned by any one of the studios. I'd be a Warner Brothers actor or a Disney actor or a Paramount actor or a Universal actor. And then like a soccer team, I could get loaned out to other studios, whether I liked it or not. And my owner would be making bank on my loan out. I might make a little or something. I'm not totally sure about that. But it was an abusive system, which is why the unions and the guilds and everything formed to kind of, make it better for us. Although that's all crumbling. That's a whole other conversation. But you go back far enough and Warner Brothers didn't even have a wall around it. Like it was some sound stages and offices and it was surrounded by a bunch of bungalows and everybody lived in these bungalows. And then you would just walk or bike to work and, you'd show up for work and they'd be like, all right, Mr. Levi, you're going to be in this Western today and you're going to do this for a month. And then, and I'd finish that. And they're like, all right, now go report to stage 10. You're going to be in this sci-fi movie. You're going to go to the moon. But the cool thing is that A, I had consistent work, and B, I was working with a lot of the same actors and a lot of the same crew. Like you had community. It was awesome. That was one of the good things about it. Again, it was also an abusive system. But even as LA grew and sprawled and expanded and all that stuff, still all the work was in LA. So you had kind of a more general, broader, but still community of people in Hollywood that all worked in one town. And then in the early 80s, that's when everything started to unravel, because that's when producers started to realize, well, wait a minute, we can go shoot in Canada. And it was Vancouver actually that kind of started it. Okay. I mean, by the way, I don't know all of the details of this. I'm sure there's some people who'll be like, no, actually it was, whatever. But brass tacks, 21 Jump Street, the TV show with Johnny Depp, early 80s, supposed to take place in New York or something like that. But, it's movie magic. Like you don't need to shoot in that place. You can dress up backlots, or in this case, make Vancouver your backlot to make it look like whatever urban area you want it to be. Yes. And it was well before there were incentive programs. It was simply just, it was just cheaper because the Canadian dollar was, 50 cents on whatever. It was like half the value. So they're like, well, our dollar goes twice as far in Canada, so we'll go shoot it up in Canada. Great, fine. Well, then Canada starts going, well, look at this. We're getting all this, look at this, toilet holder. We're getting all this work up here. And to all my Canadian friends, I'm just joking. And so then they started leaning into it and they go, well, let's bring more up here. And so then they started these incentive programs. Well, then the United States started waking up to this. And they're like, well, we don't want to be losing. If Hollywood doesn't need to shoot in LA and they're willing to shoot in other places, then let's us entice them to come to our places. And so then you started having Louisiana, and Michigan had a very brief one and that totally fell apart. Again, just mismanagement, right? Like you still need good legislators and people that understand how to lead those incentive programs. And eventually that led to Georgia 15 years ago, that of all the states in the United States had by far the best, and still in a lot of ways has the best incentive program, but it still can't compete with what's now going on in Europe. Because in Europe, they're giving you just as good of an incentive, 30 cents, 35 cents, 40 cents, sometimes 50 cents back on the dollar. And also they don't have unions. So much of what our union
doesn't have unions?
Not like we do, not in our industry. No.
I'm shocked.
No. And so much of what the unions even provide us, like why do people in Hollywood, why do we value our unions and our guilds? Where in large part, it's because they provide our health insurance and pension programs and all that stuff, right? I mean, really, those are the two big things. Well, in Europe, they have universal health care. You're not getting your insurance from your union. If you have a union, you're getting it from the government, right? So a lot of these other costs you're not having to absorb that in Europe, which is why Marvel, who was firmly embedded in Georgia, talking about the mercenary aspect of it, like they were all in on Georgia. Pinewood Studios, Dan Cathy from Chick-fil-A and Pinewood built Pinewood Studios. Then Dan bought them out and made it Trilith Studios. And it's state-of-the-art studios. And they were like, and we got this long-term partnership with Marvel and DC and Disney, and we're making all of these movies. Well, then all of a sudden Europe was like, yeah, well, we can do it even better. And so Marvel was like, well, it's been great, but we want more money. We want to save more. We want to save more money on our bottom line so that we make more money.
Because there was no, I'm going to oversimplify, but there was no intrinsic value to the location outside of the cost.
Because Marvel didn't own those studios. Marvel was always renting those studios. Now, you have a lot of other studios. Netflix owns studios and Amazon might own some studios. And I've had a lot of people talking to me about, look at all these new studios that are being built up, right? Because I talk to people, and maybe this is a good way to kind of transition into AI, but this is my big fear. We are at the precipice where I believe the entertainment industry is the canary in the coal mine, or one of. There's other industries that are similarly in very dire straits, but I won't talk about them because those are not my industries. This is my industry. We are crossing into this new world. All of us together as a world are crossing into this new era where AI is getting so good, and robotics that the AI will go into is getting so good that in 5 years' time, we're going to have an entirely different world. And all industries are going to be insanely disrupted. And I believe that there's going to be massive unemployment, which is going to lead to UBI and things like that. Let's put a pin in that. We'll come back to that. But when it comes to entertainment, I firmly believe that there's two things that are going to be happening simultaneously. One of them is going to happen much quicker than the other. But let's talk about like original movies and TV shows and video games and music, right? So the studios are going to start with, well, we're going to start implementing AI to cover, menial, low-hanging fruit, low-level jobs. So as an actor, extras, right? That's the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to being an on-camera actor. Well, already in 2.5 years ago, when we all struck and fought so hard for these new contracts, that was one of the biggest things on the table. You're just going to scan a human being one time, and then you're going to use them in perpetuity to be an extra in whatever movie you want, right? It's crazy. And we fought. We're like, no, you can't do that. And the studios finally kind of backed down on that. Our contracts are up in like 8 months. Those contracts are only 3-year contracts. They're coming up. And when they come up for renegotiation, AI will be so good at that point that I believe the studios, we're all going to come back to the table. All the guilds and all the unions and the studios and the producers are all going to come back to the table. And the studios and the guilds and the unions are going to say, well, we demand better pay, or we demand this, or we demand that. And the studios are going to say, no, you're not going to get any of that. We don't even need you anymore, because if we wanted to, we could just go make a fully AI movie, which is animated, but it looks like real life. So it's, it's animated, but it's not an animated movie. And you're all out of a job. And people will kick and scream and say, no, you can't do that. Now, I don't think the studios are going to do that, because I think they're smart enough to understand that if they just did that, there would be such a massive uproar in the public, and everybody, and people will be like, it's too hard a gear shift. But they will come back and say, there are going to be some concessions you need to make. If any of you still want to have a job, you're still going to have to concede that we don't need extras anymore, and we don't need, these low-level jobs anymore. If the mid-level and high-level employees still want to have a job, you need to concede this. And after much debate and much kicking and screaming, I think people are ultimately going to concede, because we already got so hosed in the pandemic and in these last strikes. So many people are still not working right now. Our industry is imploding. And so I think that people are going to ultimately make these big compromises. Now, That's not going to immediately displace everybody in the industry, but it will start displacing lots more people. And let's say we sign another 3-year contract. Well, 3 years down the road, AI will be even like exponentially better 3 years later, because every 6 months it's exponentially better. And then 3 years later, we'll come back to the table and the studios will say, all right, well, remember those mid-level jobs that we said we weren't going to touch? Well, now we're going to touch those jobs. And the high-level artists will all be like, but you can't. And they're like, well, do you still want to have a job? Do you actually still want to work? And then those high-level people will be like, well, yeah, but you shouldn't do this. It's like, I know, but bottom lines, capitalism. And so then that will keep.
I want to play the counter though. To
okay,
this.
yeah.
So and maybe the fact is the push is going to be against the studios. In that we saw like YouTube and a whole different class of creator, whatever word you want to use, kind of came out of that.
Yeah.
So do we not see the opportunity for non-studio? And I mean, we'll put what you're building on the sides, but like.
Independent creators.
But yeah, independent creators to be able to, the exact thing that you just said, that fully animated, looking like that, but it's coming from a person. It's just like, it's the Zachary Levi AI movie that created this. And it's the story that they wanted to create.
That just unemployed 400.
Or you have 400 more. So we had 98% of the country being farmers, whatever, 150 years ago. Now it's 2%, and we produce a lot more. We'll put a pin in like the food system for a second, but the point is we produce more food, right? And so isn't there the opportunity that these tools will give creative superpowers?
How much bandwidth do you have to watch anything? Take away the fact you have kids.
Right.
Just a regular person, how much bandwidth do they have?
Show here and there, right?
So if everyone and their mom is all making their own show, who's actually making any money?
But there's crap and not crap now anyway.
How do you find it?
That's a reasonable question in terms of curation and...
If you flood a market, if you like tomato soup and there's a dozen companies that make tomato soup, it's easy enough to go look at the selection at the grocery store and be like, okay, of all these, and you can look at the ingredients and all that stuff, and you can determine which tomato soup that you like. If everyone makes tomato soup, how do you... What are you even doing? It's supply and demand.
But that's a commodity product versus like we finally got around to, like, my wife and I recently watched Shogun.
Okay.
Right, which is
great show.
The only, like, she got mad because we watched the whole thing like in a week, midnight, every night, just to get through it, right? And of course, like, that's our comparison point now. Is any new show is like, well, is it going to be good? There is a billion things out there, and the curation search, all this, like, that's a question in general, right? How to back to our creating the rails kind of thing. Like, I actually have used AI and put in to be like, okay, shoot some stuff at me based on this. So it's assuming we can get through the curation and discovery problem, which is a huge problem. It's the ability to make, there's been a lot of like stuff. I mean, Netflix pumps out a lot of things that aren't good. And then you have like Demon Hunter that been on too many times.
No, sure. But I think, listen, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule.
Yeah.
Right? Listen, I'm going to sit back in this chair. There's always going to be exceptions to the rule. Let me step back for a second. How many times I believe that human nature is such that we prefer to not be inundated with insane amounts of choices, right? Like, if you go to a restaurant and they've got a limited menu, I find that to be relieving. I find it relieving. First of all, you're going to the restaurant, hopefully, because you've already heard that there's good food here or whatever, right? And now you've got a menu, and it's a limited menu. It's like, here's your options. This is all we got. There's something that is calming about the idea that, okay, I don't have a million options to choose from. These are my options. When you go to Jerry's Deli or Cheesecake Factory, and it's like, I don't know. I mean, I could do that, I could do that. How often is watching Netflix not actually watching anything on Netflix? You are endlessly scrolling through the options because you're like, oh, I could watch that. Oh, but there's that. Oh, and then there's that. And then you just keep going and going. And now you're burnt out because it's just like, it's so much. And then on top of that, you've got your smartphone sitting next to you and you're like, or I could just go on Instagram and kind of burn 30 minutes or an hour or whatever. And I'll just do that because we're fatigued with options. Once upon a time, you got only theater. And that was if you lived in a town that had a theater and there happened to be something that was playing or some show that was, some play or something was going on. All right, we're going to go out for a night to watch a play. Then we got radio. Now you had two options. You could go watch some live performance or you could listen to these radio plays. Then you got television. Now you could go see live performance, listen to a radio play, or you could watch this thing on the boob tube. Oh my gosh, look at now. But even the television only had 3 options on it. NBC, ABC, and CBS. That was it. And then eventually, a little bit down the road, late 80s or so, we got Fox. And then in the 90s, they tried with UPN and then that, and Warner Brothers Network, and that all merged and became CW. And I'm not even sure that's even really a thing anymore. I mean, it kind of is, but it isn't. But still, on television, at max, you had 5 options. ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox.
Cable, though.
No.
Oh, okay.
Just regular network television. And concurrently with that, in the 80s, you got cable, which now gave you 100 more options. But with cable, it was a little easier to sift through that, in part because when cable first came out, it was like a lot. I mean, Disney Channel. I mean, I grew up and how old are you?
44.
44. I'm 45. Disney Channel, when we were growing up, Disney Channel was not a bunch of original programming. It was everything from the vault. We would watch it, and you'd watch all those old Mickey cartoons and Pecos Bill and Paul Bunyan and Mickey Mouse Club, the new Mickey Mouse Club even. I was like the only original programming they had on there. And it was Disney Channel, and there were a few other places that you could find like actual entertaining content. And then the rest of cable was news or sports but again, there was still something that you could kind of wrap your head around. But then all of that kept expanding and expanding and expanding. And then you started adding the internet, even before streaming. Now you've got the internet and everything else that it's streaming out to you. And then you get actual streamers and their endless amounts of options that you can have, right? So we're already in a deficit of attention. You don't have enough bandwidth to possibly sift through everything that is available to you, which is overwhelming. So you can't find everything, you don't know everything, and you're like, I guess, or you maybe hear somebody talking about it. But then also, part of all that was, you used to have something with network television where it was appointment television. It was on at that time.
Right.
Like maybe you had a VCR that was constantly blinking 12 like we did. And maybe you could record some stuff, which we never really did. We were only using our VCR to, watch movies or whatever. But by and large, you were tuning in at that time and you were watching that show. And again, predominantly it was 3 network options,
right,
which is why Cheers could have 50% of the viewing audience in America watching one episode of Cheers, which is why they could demand advertisers spend exorbitant amounts of money to advertise on the show, because they knew they had a rapt audience who was watching the show while it was airing live and watching all those commercials.
Yeah, we're never going to see the MASH finale numbers ever.
Never again. So as soon as that DVR hit the scene, I was telling all my friends, I was like, guys, this is the end. Like network television studios and everything, they can all keep tap dancing and doing dog and pony shows and pretending like, oh, but numbers in this demographic are up. And this is like, no, sorry, your model is broken. It doesn't work. It was all based on advertising dollars. And those advertising dollars are going the way of the dodo because nobody's watching the ads. It doesn't make sense anymore, right? So, but that's a whole other thing. Just bandwidth of attention. We are stretched, bro. We are so stretched. And that's with professionals making professional content. So now, every time Dick and Harry and their mom and their uncle and their dog can sit with a computer and just have a few creative ideas, not actual talent or ability or skill, but just everybody's got creative ideas. You've got ideas, I've got ideas, anybody, whether you're in the industry or outside of the industry, you've got an idea that's burning a hole in your pocket. I would love to see a pirate movie that does this, that, or the other. Okay, I'm going to type those keywords into this thing, and then it's going to make this thing, and it's going to tell me I made it. That's the programming will come out. It'll be like, you're the movie maker now. Look at you. Look at how talented you are. Look at this incredible thing that you made. You didn't make shit. Gave prompts, you gave keywords, you gave that to a thing that made a thing for you, but you didn't actually go and design these shots. And now, again, some more professional people.
That's the difference, right? Because like I can't draw a stick figure, and I can make whatever you want to use, a little out of the word make, interesting images now. I have many creative friends, and they can do things a lot more powerfully interesting than I can. And so, and there's a difference. Like you know, my oldest is into chess, and we were driving to a chess tournament, and I opened up Sono. I was like, give me a sports anthem for chess with his name in it. And, like, it was slop because it was good for that moment, right? Yeah. Like, that's all it was in that.
That's fun.
But like, I am excited about the people that I know and others who are using it and can produce things faster in some ways. Now, there may be differences in, to your whole point, like, imagining where like VO3 is today and then in 2 years, and you know, but I think that they give, I'm still in the superpower camp for the creatives. And I mean, look, to your point, we have an overwhelming and people make choices. Like I always joke, the moment I knew I got old was when I heard, you know, some new music on I don't want to say the radio, but wherever I heard it. And I was like, I don't know who this is, and I don't care that much to figure out who it is, because you're like, I'm going to pick and choose the things that are important to me. That being said, like, we are still have appointment viewing for Chris Nolan's The Odyssey in July. Like, that is, I'm going to go see that.
Yeah,
that is like,
me too.
So like it's still,
but that's going to become less and less and less of a thing. It's not that those movies aren't going to be made. You're still going to have some amazing unicorn movies, but the market is going to get inundated with two things. One, studios leaning more and more on AI to replace their workforce. It'll still use real humans in certain capacities to make some of those movies. But to me, the thing that's going to happen even faster, and that's going to decimate our industry, is when all the studios have their own AI agent that they can provide to the public, to the audience. I'll use Disney Plus as an example, because they have a massive catalog, a massive library of IP. When all of a sudden you can go to Disney Plus, and for pennies on the dollar, you or your children can access the entire library of IP, and you can make whatever you want with IP that they already own. It doesn't cost them any money other than the compute power. So I talk about a business model, doesn't cost them anything, and they can charge people, by the way, and it'll be competitive. If a fully human-made movie costs you $20, well, for $5, steal. It's a deal. And your kid gets to be super creative, type in whatever they want. I want a treasure hunt on Mars starring Luke Skywalker and Indiana Jones and the cast of Avengers and Flynn Rider, because why not? And it feels like it was directed by Steven Spielberg and scored by Hans Zimmer, and maybe they'll get a little bit of a kick because you used them specifically in the prompt, or maybe you don't. Maybe you just say, you know, it feels like this or that or whatever it is. And that will be a slog of certain, in a way. But ultimately, though, and your child, can scan their face and their voice, and they get to be in the movie. And also, you can bring back long dead actors. I have a friend in Austin, in town, great guy. He works for a management company that represents dead celebrities. They go to the estates of long dead celebrities. They pay them some fee for the NIL of whomever. And now we have the access. And here's the thing. I love Singing in the Rain. If all of a sudden I had access to go make Singing in the Rain 2 with Gene Kelly, Donald O'Connor, Debbie Reynolds, music that is fashioned after the same people who made the music in the first one, and you can even put it through a filter that makes it look like it was shot in the 40s or whatever it was, and I can have a Singing in the Rain 2, it would put me out of work, and I would, for $5, like, I want to watch that. You know what I'm saying? Like, the curiosity alone will get everybody, even altruists, going like, well, I wonder what that is. Is it any good? I don't know. I mean, it's $5. I'll go whatever. Well, the first taste gets you hooked. And then all of a sudden, now, family movie night is not everybody getting up and going to a movie, which is $20 a head and popcorn and parking and all of the things. It's like, yo, I can empower my child who gets to go be creative and make a movie, and we all get to sit home and watch it. And then tomorrow or next movie night, your next kid gets to make one, and your other kid gets to make one. And then all of a sudden, that's all you're doing as a family. You're just watching what you sit at home and make. And that's all your bandwidth. You're not going to the theater to watch more of The Odyssey or Oppenheimer or Barbie or any of these original pieces. And if you are going to an original piece, chances are that they've already implemented AI and already laid off a whole bunch of people in making whatever that original movie is. So, yes, the argument that I hear often is, well, it's going to empower people. It'll let anybody be a creator. To which I say, but are they really the creator? Or are they just being somewhat creative and something else is being the creator, which means all the skills and abilities and talents that people used to hone over years to get good at playing the guitar. If you can just go to a computer program and say, I want a rock song or about chess and blah, 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 and it's awesome. And by the way, it is. Rogan recently, I can't remember who his guest was on the show at the time, but they were playing a song. It's a 50 Cent rap song. I can't remember the name of the song, but it was done in the stylings of like a sick, bluesy R&B singer. And it was amazing. It was amazing. What happens if that comes on the radio? Like you're saying, you don't know. You're not going to go figure out who sang that song or whatever. If it comes up in your Spotify algorithm, you're not...
there was some AI band on Spotify that had like some unbelievable number of views.
But turns out that was actually a ruse. That actually is a real band who told people... I mean, I think they might have used a little AI in some of the things that they did, but I believe...
As a way to get people... That's smart.
It was a publicity stuff.
That's great.
Kind of smart. A little nefarious, but kind of smart. But at the end of the day...
It only works once.
All just going to be, it's a flood. It will be a flood. We'll be inundated with AI content that will be amazing. This is the other argument I hear. Well, if it's not from a human, it won't have the human soul. It won't have that human touch. Bullshit. We're all LLMs. I am an amalgamation of every movie and TV show and video game that I've ever watched and played. Ever. When I make acting choices, guaranteed, I'm doing a thing, whether consciously or subconsciously, that is hearkening back to something I saw Tom Hanks do in some movie.
Like it's the whole copyright issue of like, you just described like you trained and learned on, did this, and the AI, and I don't know the answer because I see both sides and clearly like, I don't want to, no, I'm going to go steal, what Tom Hanks did and put that and then straight up that, like, no, you got like, you can't do that.
Sure.
But at the same time, this is how we all learn.
But even using another example, and again, there'll be safeguards for this, but race car drivers, right now, in order to be a great race car driver, obviously, it's human talent and great technology, right? Well, what happens when all of a sudden somebody can just put some incredible AI into their car that counteracts all the mistakes, that drives that car?
Okay, so chess is what chess then? So everybody admits, like Magnus Carlsen on, that they will lose to the AI and the best computers. Like I think it was I saw a quote like on it was Magnus Carlsen on Rogan. He's like, if he played his iPhone on the highest level, he'd lose. Chess has never been more popular, in terms of people watching it. People, they don't. I don't want to watch too.
Sure. Well, but that's competition. Like this is why I think that anything competitive, we're still going to be interested in the human level of achievement. But my point with the race car driving though is, if everyone can drive as good as a professional race car driver because they have this thing that they can now put into their car, it doesn't mean that they are a great race car driver. It means that they might have got to the finish line faster, but they were using this augmentation in order to get there. Now, because it's a competitive sport, none of us are going to really accept it on the same level. But when it comes to art, which is all kind of subjective, and you have a group of talented human beings who make a movie, and then you have this one person who uses AI to go make this entirely AI movie. Yes, you can argue, well, that one person, there's people involved, that one person who used some creativity and refined it down and made this thing, while simultaneously unemploying all of those people. And then you push back and you said, well, yeah, but what if 400 people all made that movie? Well, now play that out, extrapolate that out. If everyone in the world is able to do that, it's supply and demand. It used to be special to go to a movie because not that many people knew how to make a movie well. If everyone can go make incredible movies, if every Star Wars fan in the world can go make their Star Wars movie that Kathleen Kennedy can't screw up.
A softball there on like, yes.
Then
yeah,
they
will. On that. It made
then they
movies.
will. And also, we live in a creator-sharer economy at this point. So not only will every Star Wars fan in the world go make their favorite Star Wars movie, they'll share it with everybody. And then every Star Wars nerd is going to be like, oh my God. And they're going to consume their own, and they're going to share it, and they're going to consume their buddies and their other buddies. And, oh, wow, that's cool what you did there, and that's cool what you did that. All while all of these actual artists and everybody that would make a movie are being like, what about, you don't want to watch what we have? I mean, that's great and everything. That's great, but look at what we can do. We don't need you anymore. So Again, if you play that out, in my mind, that's the demise. That's the end of what this is. But that's why one of the reasons why I'm building what I'm building here in Austin is to hold the line. I don't think we're ever going to come back to, like right now, currently, let's say the whole pie is human-made content. 5 years from now, it's going to be a sliver of the pie. Similarly, we all used to listen to vinyl. Then the cassette came out, and everyone was like, well, I don't need vinyl. I got the cassette. And then CDs came out. Nah. And then streaming. Nah. More of this. But some people, brave souls, awesome souls, said, you know what? I know it's not in vogue. I know it's not the thing. It's not the highest level of tech or whatever, but I love this licorice pizza. I love that it's tactile and real and human and even imperfect on some level, and some crackle and scratch in it. There's something warm about a vinyl record, and I'm going to keep making vinyl records. And as it turns out, vinyl record sales have gone up in the last 10 years. Why? Because there is always going to be, deep down in on all of us, there is a desire for it. The problem is that most people are not altruistic enough to really want to go to, it's not convenient enough. It's like, yeah, but streaming, it's easy. It's on my phone. It's like, I don't want to carry around all these records. I get it. But there's always, I believe, going to be at least some sliver of what we can create that can serve a part of the audience. In the same way that organic food, right? Like organic food exists, and then there's everything else. And when you go to even a Whole Foods that used to seemingly be all, and started right here in Austin, seemingly was all organic for a while, but no longer. They have their organic section and stuff like that. Well, most people don't go, they don't have the money or they don't care enough to go get organic, but there are some people that are diehard. I'm one of those people. I want organic. I don't want pesticides. I don't want any of this nonsense. So I will go out of my way to spend extra money to go, and we're this sliver. So what I'm doing at Wyldwood is I'm holding that line. I'm saying, I believe that it's imperative that we as a society hold on to human art and entertainment. It's imperative for our survival as a species, as for our happiness, you know, all of those things. Also, I see it as a market opportunity because I think everyone else is going to zig and we're going to zag. Everyone else is going to be leaning more and more and more into AI and being like, look at us, everyone can be a creator and blah, blah, blah. It's like, but there's going to be some people who are like, yeah, but like it's amazing and it looks cool and I could be the star of it and all, and it's a fraction of the price. But man, I really want something that I know deep down is only humans. Now, and by the way, just so we're clear, I'm not like anti-AI. I think that you can't stop progress. You can only hope to guide it. I have every intention of utilizing AI so long as it remains a tool in a human's toolbox and not just replaces the human 100%. Entirely, right? There are going to be exceptions to that rule. Example, our AirPods, or really any, not just the Apple AirPods, but all listening devices are very quickly all going to have real-time live language translation.
Yeah. Babelfish exists.
Which is amazing. This is a thing that human beings have longed for since the Tower of Babel. How do we communicate with each other when we are from two very different places in the world and don't speak each other's languages? Oh my God, now that barrier, that barrier of communication is broken. And I think that's a good thing for all humanity. It's also going to displace every translator that's ever worked as a translator. To me, that the juice is worth that squeeze. That's a small enough industry.
Creative destruction.
And we've always had that happen and we will continue to have that happen. But when it comes to thousands and thousands and thousands, and if not millions and millions and millions of jobs, we've got to be very careful about how we implement all these things. I'm very bullish on Elon. As I've said, I do believe he's a good dude. He's got a touch of the tism or whatever, but he's like a humanist. He wants human flourishing. He wants to explore the cosmos. He wants to make life easier. He wants to make life better, but he's pro-human. He's pro-freedom. He's like, I love it. He's also actively a part of replacing an entire driving economy. As somebody recently, I heard that drivers is actually the largest overall industry.
I think it's because of truck drivers.
And delivery drivers and taxis and Ubers and everything. But very soon, that's all gone the way of the dodo. Where do all those people work? What are they going to do? I think these are very scary things that we've got to start weighing. And ultimately, what are the solutions to that? And I think, unfortunately, the only solution to any of that stuff on scale is going to be UBI. And UBI is a terrifying thing because while some people are like, great, bring it on. I don't have to work. I don't have to do anything. I can just collect a check.
Then every experiment with UBI has failed because nothing changes with, like, they're just like, they don't, do any extra work. None of this happens.
I agree. And also you lose purpose. A job is not just a matter of making money. It's like, what do you do? What is your purpose?
Back to our entire beginning of the conversation with calling, which is a great way to kind of swoon about. I understand now how Rogan go for like 3 hours,
Bro, well, but I'm sorry. Like I said, I'm verbose and tangential, so I could go forever.
No, it's when we first talked, I said about going down rabbit holes. I do always like to end with the same question. What's next, Austin?
Well, for me, building Wyldwood, building a movie studio, living community resort, which I believe that is in a larger sense. And again, obviously I'm biased, but I think that this is kind of going to be necessary for all people. I think that when it comes to why we're even here, like we weren't created to work on assembly lines and stamp out widgets or push papers. Like obviously people are very unhappy doing a lot of these jobs. And I think a lot of us will be fine with a lot of those jobs being gone. But then where is the purpose? Where do people go? And I think that we were created and we're here to create and discover. Creation and discovery. The arts and the sciences. These are the only two fields that I think we need to hold on to. And Wyldwood as a campus will be safeguarding those types of jobs. Specifically where they come together to make entertainment. But ultimately, I think we need to build more campuses, more places where people can flourish in the arts and the sciences. Everything else, fine, automate it. I don't care. But when it comes to what gives us purpose in this life, that's what we need to hold on to. What's next? Fortunately, Austin is a hub for these things, is a hub for creation and discovery. It's a part of its ethos and DNA. My hope, my belief is that not just Wyldwood, but other entrepreneurs and other business people and are recognizing where these trends are going and continuing to create spaces where we all have purpose as we move forward in the future. And I think we're unlike a lot of other places in the world that are not really that based on creation and discovery. They're going to have a much harder time with this. But that's what I think. And I hope and I want to believe that, the state of Texas and specifically the leaders in Austin will continue to do their job to make this place a magnet for it, a hub for it, that no matter what's going on sociopolitically in the world, that the people here are cared for and protected, that our liberties are protected. I'm looking forward to all of the cool new tech that comes out of all of this, but may we proceed with intention and caution, because the heads of all of the AI companies have basically all thrown their hands up in the air and they said, listen, even if we all stopped here in the US, China's not going to stop, Russia's not going to stop, nobody else is going to stop, and we can't let them get to AGI, which ultimately really is ASI. We can't let them get there first, because whoever gets to there first really will control the world. So what's next, Austin? I want Austin to be the place that gets there first and then very conscientiously controls that to help guide us into a Star Trek future and not a dystopian future. And that's where we're going to one of those two places, right? And I don't know. I think we're some experts on the subject, and I've listened to lots of podcasts with lots of these experts. Almost all of them say we're going to go through some really gnarly times, probably like 10 years worth of those really gnarly times before we get to the other side where things settle. Again, the floodwaters come up and we're getting thrashed around in the ark for 40 days and 40 nights before those floodwaters start going back down again. And we're touching back down on terra firma, and there's a whole new world in front of us. And I believe, it's part of the reason why I came here. I believe that Austin, and I know this might sound, kind of ridiculous, but of all the places in the world, I think that this is a place that can help really lead us to that promised land. I think this is a place that is part of that promised land. I think that's what we all feel.
That's why we all came.
Yeah.
Zach, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Thanks for letting me, rant and rave, but, that's what I tend to do.
So what's next, Austin? We're glad you've joined us on this journey. Please subscribe at your favorite podcast catcher, leave us a review, and let your colleagues know about us. This will help us grow the podcast and continue bringing you unique interviews and insights. Thanks again for listening, and see you soon.